Cheers. If I can say, I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. Love your podcast. It was actually originally the Ziegler House, which my folks bought in 91. And before that, the old family house is 2 over. And that one which is where my great-grandpa was born, which was built in the late 1800s. And that's where they first settled. So that one's a really cool house. Yep, 1902. Well, by default, I think every Italian family is involved in the wine industry one way or the other by either being consumers or producers, right? And they came over, my great-great-grandpa, Rocco Morisoli, which is a fantastic name, came over in 1883 from Monte Carlo, Switzerland. So we're actually from Switzerland, so Swiss Italian. But mostly culturally Italian. Came over in 1883. He married Lodovina in 1893. In between those years, he worked on a dairy farm, worked just manual labor, had a stint down in Santa Barbara, and then came back up here in 1902. And then that's when they settled on Kneebaum Lane here. 1902, settled in the house where my great-grandfather Plinio was born, and started sharecropping basically for a few years, and then eventually bought that first block that you see out there of 10 acres. And then the names rapidly went from cool Italian names to Phil, Gary, and Chris, and here we are today. Great question. I don't know. I think it would be... I don't know what drew them to Kneebaum Lane, but I'm sure glad they picked it because... Back then, this was actually, I think, Watson Lane. It wasn't known as Kneebaum Lane yet. Of course, Gustav Kneebaum was living up at the end of the road, but I don't think they had renamed the street that. And yeah, they settled here. There's a Kreckler Tract was the name of the actual plot of land. And it was kind of in between where we would call the Doak Ranch. And the Doak Ranch is most of where the Carmelite Monastery is and where Tokelon is. And yeah, that's where they decided to settle down. So grew grapes here, sold all of those grapes mostly to the Christian Brothers Winery, and eventually went into like Sunny St. Helena Winery, the Co-op. So all of those kind of early wine or wineries that just didn't do any type of vineyard designates. It was just wine that was for the drinking. So. Well, people, if you've ever been asked the question, where would you go back? What time period would you go back to if you could have a space or time machine? My answer is always 1920s Rutherford, because I would love to see what was going on during Prohibition in Rutherford and Napa Valley as a whole. My great-grandfather Plinio owned the general store, which is where the Rutherford Grill is today.
Really?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep, the general merchandise store. He owned that. Actually ended up selling it to the Tonellas, who's another name that you'll probably recognize.
As in Steve Tonella?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Steve Tonella's grandfather, Botch Tonella, ended up buying the store. So they traded it back and forth. And in the 20s, 26 specifically is when he bought the store. He would actually take supplies from the store and run them up to Mount St. John. And at the very top of Mount St. John, there was a quicksilver mine. So they would make mercury up there, and then we'd come down the hill and we'd go on to the train and go down to Vallejo, Oakland, and then get sent off for mining or the war effort. It was actually had taken some international flights that landed there.
Oh, really?
Not even as a joke, yeah. So that could... we could still have it today, but we don't, unfortunately.
Well,
that would be great to have it.
Valuable property, too.
Yeah. It was actually paved.
No.
Yeah, it was paved runway. My grandpa was actually flying out of there once with some friends, and they crashed the airplane on the end of the runway, ground looped it, all walked away. But yeah, so there is some history to that runway as well. Great neighborhood. I mean, yeah, we're right here. We've got, like you said, Inglenook just to the north. We've got the J.J. Cohen Ranch. Our friends at Scarecrow just here to our west. Phelps is right across from us. Greer. So really good people, good neighborhood, a fun area to be in. great-grandpa Plinio. He actually made wine in the basement of the old house in the 20s. So he'd make his own wine. And there's an old pipe that actually goes from where our water tank was underground into the cellar where he would make the wine, set it down there, put it in a barrel, and that was just his own drinking stash. So love to see if there was anything left from that, but unfortunately nothing made it. And then since the really 1902, the business model has just been growing grapes and selling the grapes. As I mentioned, everywhere from the Christian Brothers Winery to Sunny St. Helena, the co-op, and then in about the 80s, we branched out to some other wineries that started doing more vineyard designates. That was basically all I did when I was a kid. I would get odd jobs from Pops, and one of the few earliest jobs that I remember having was picking the plastic knives out of the ground after the vineyard had been staked, right? So we would go through, you'd lay it out with the plastic knives, and then my dad would pay me and my cousins 1 cent per plastic knife we pulled out, and we would save them and we'd reuse them again. So, but that was my first jobs. My other jobs were, I'd water the rows down, try to keep the dust off of the grapes, and when we would redevelop a vineyard, I would glue together all of the sub-main hoses and have those ready to go. So, just stuff like that. I was always running around on a four-wheeler or a tractor, helping out here and there. And when I wasn't in the vineyard, I'd be up hiking on Mount St. John or, running around playing paintball or doing something with my friends. Back then, like today, still, there was just no one up there. It's just kind of your own little paradise up there to run around, and a lot of history up there with mines and old houses up there that have since burned down, and it's a neat spot. So that always kept me really busy. And my dad always said, if you're not busy, I'm going to find something for you to do. So it was good. I would be busy. I'd find something. Always, yeah. There's lots of boar up there, lots of coyotes. Ellie Coppola, who lives up there with Francis, has seen a couple mountain lions, and they'll just come up and lay on their porch and kind of hang out. So, yeah. There is also a bear up there, a big black bear. So you're not the top of the food chain on Mount St. John. Well, I'd always really enjoyed the idea of, whether it be firefighting or serving in the Army. My grandpa was in the Army as a medic or a cook. We can't tell which one he did first. Maybe he was a bad cook and they sent him to medic school, or maybe he was a bad medic and they sent him to cook school. I don't know. But that always kind of had been in my goals of something to do. And my dad and I had always restored old World War II Jeeps. And I had kind of collected all of that old military kind of curios and relics. And it actually started when I was in the fire department. So I used to work for CDF, the Department of Forestry, California Department of Forestry, before it became CAL FIRE, and as a seasonal. So between my school, when I was at Sacramento State, and between my summers basically, I would spend those working for CDF. And I remember we were on a fire down in LA, down by Hemet, and it was this ridge we had to kind of climb down, and there was a spot fire we had to catch, which was kind of down below us, which is always kind of a watch out situation when you have fire below you, right? For obvious reasons. So we called for a helicopter to come help out, one of the bucket helicopters. And I remember being on the fire, and this medevac Army Black Hawk came by, and it dropped about 5 or 6 buckets of water on the fire, completely put it out. And I remember being there on the ground, scraping with my shovel or my McLeod, and I looked up, and the pilot with the doors off, hanging out like he's flying a Jeep, gives me a shaka as they fly off to the next assignment. And I looked down as I'm scraping. I said, well, what the heck am I doing? I need to go do that. That looks like way more fun. And about a month later, I signed up for the National Guard. Did that for a couple years, and then after I finished my degree in Sacramento State, which was emergency management, then I joined the Army and got commissioned, and then went to flight school, and kind of that's what started the military career. And for 12 years, I did that. Blackhawks, yep, UH-60, Alpha, Limas, and Mikes. So all 3 varieties, all 3 flavors. 8 more years and you can be retired, right? At 20. But I'd always known that I wanted to come back here and be with my family and help out and do vineyard things. And the timing just worked out. I was able to command 2 medevac companies. I finished out with a medevac company in Hawaii that I absolutely loved. Had a great time. But after those company commands, there's a period of 3 to 5 years of lots of flying of the LMD, which is the large metal desk. So a lot of staff work, a lot of extra classes and courses I just really didn't want to take. So I decided to come back home and still do Army stuff. I just joined the Guard, the National Guard, which is like Army Light. It's just a little bit less full-time. So it's a part-time job. I can still fly. We can still do all of the fun Army stuff without having it kind of run your life. It's great. About 110 years old are the oldest vines that we have. And that is we call Old Block, which was planted by my great-grandfather Plinio in 1910 to 1920. It had been ripped out due to phylloxera, the first bit of phylloxera in the 1890s, 1900s, and replanted slowly. And that specific Old Block vineyard was regrafted. It's all on St. George rootstock. Yep, regrafted from cuttings from the Inglenook Gate Vineyard. So just up the road where the Inglenook Gate is, we stole a bunch of cuttings from there and planted this vineyard. So what you'll find in there is a really cool field blend mix of Zinfandel primarily, Syrah, Petite Syrah, Mourvedre, Alicante Boucher, Negrette, Black Muscat, and just a bunch of different stuff. It's fascinating to think that, people say, oh, we blended, that's how we blended in the old days, was we just got a bunch of different things and put them into a field, and that was our blend, which is true, but I don't think it was intentional. It's just got what we could. Yeah. Get the red grapes you can, plant them in the field, and then make wine from it. But that specific block, again, planted by my great-grandpa, was kind of the favorite little section because it's a little bit higher. It's kind of the highest point on the property. It's really well drained, and it's all those Pleasanton Bale loams, or that Pleasanton Bale loam soil from the Mayacamas, which has just been this erosion, these alluvial soils that have come down off the mountain for, hundreds of thousands of years. And that specific spot was saved because it was probably the favorite location for the vineyard. And I think my great-grandfather and grandfather liked it and kept it around. My dad continued to like it, and it's still there today. Everything else south of there had been ripped out and planted to prunes and walnuts. And that was during Prohibition. They just got rid of a lot of it. So absolutely, check it out. MorisoliVineyard.com, singular. And you can also find us on Instagram at Morisoli Vineyard. And that's the greatest place to find us. So there we put on a bunch of old photos. You'll be able to see some of the family history there. And we are just sold out of the 2018, and the 2019 will release in September of this coming year, or of 23, and then the 2020 will be September of 24. So yeah, we've got it out there and among the wild, and it's great to see you get out there and see people's reaction to it. It's a lot of fun.